A separate angle of the incident here as well, and this was posted by somebody in Ireland outside of Roma restaurant in Carrickmar, Cross Island, and you can see the guy here like holding his knife up, looking at someone in the car, having some sort of conversation, and then walking off. Now the crazy thing about this, I'm going to get to the full story in a second, but the crazy thing about this is, if you look at this on Google Maps, you can actually see this was outside of a restaurant called Roma Takeaway, and you can see on the video here, it actually says there on the video, Roma Takeaway, but you can see this on Google Maps. This is where it happened, this is the exact street, this is the traffic lights where the car stopped, and if you turn around, look what is standing right there. A Catholic church right there, and you can see this guy literally did the most disrespectful thing that you could possibly think of. Literally pulled a knife out right outside of a church and threatened someone with a knife right outside of a church.
There's a lot of problems with drugs. The types of drugs have changed. There's many factors to why people feel things are getting much more unsafe, and also some of these problems were typically only present in Dublin, and we're starting to see them in other places in Ireland.
This is my home. I felt safe in this country and I don't anymore.
You don't feel safe?
I don't feel safe. I would not come out after dark in this country.
House our own first and then look after them. No problem.
We have people being ushered into our countries, given everything, put to the top of housing lists. How does that make sense?
I need to talk about this in a way that's even approaching being useful. I need to spend 25 minutes talking about Conor McGregor the person. I need to spend 40 minutes talking about immigration in Ireland. I need to spend 40 minutes talking about the fucking economy in Ireland. I need to spend an hour and a half talking about our fucking government. Now, my opinion on Conor McGregor is irrelevant, but I don't think he's a good person. I don't think it's particularly hard to find evidence of that. But it doesn't surprise me in the least to see a lot of people agreeing with what he was saying. There absolutely is an immigration issue in Ireland. That doesn't mean that people feel like we shouldn't take the refugees that we're able to take. It doesn't mean that people feel like people shouldn't be able to come here for better opportunities. But the systems that we have in place are being taken advantage of. And that is plain to see. And the government continually does not allow people to express their concerns about that. Along with this, Ireland continues to become one of the richest countries in the world, while most people's quality of life is going down. Our towns, and especially our cities, are becoming much less safe. Now, that's not just because of immigration. There's a lot of factors to that. But if you can't see that that's happening, then you have not left your house.
And Gardaí also discovered the most serious category of child abuse video and images on his phone.
That's who's flying in to Dublin airport from Brazil. And there was a push on recently. A lot of Brazilians, some of whom, most of whom, hopefully all of whom, are really good people. But they're pushing for direct flights from Brazil into Dublin, because their relatives that come to visit, or whoever the hell wants to come and visit, has to take a very roundabout way to get into Ireland.
100 yards down this street, this building here is a high school. Now, luckily enough, this was actually a Sunday, so these kids were not in school. But this guy literally pulled a knife out right here, literally less than 100 meters from a high school, which again is the most disrespectful thing that you could ever do. And you know, this is crazy to think that this guy is being housed by the Irish government.
Communities all over Ireland are concerned, and their concerns are continuously not being heard. And when you continuously suppress what people are feeling, you turn them towards more extreme beliefs, you increase their distrust in the government, and you push people towards
an Irish Trump. I think does he have some Irish blood in him?
Better believe it. Yeah. Look at, I'm the same as him. You know what I mean? Deport them. I've no empathy. Like, I look after our own people. I don't care how people feel about it. I want to deport every one of them. At the end of the day, our people come first. My people come first. Like, the kids over here should be forced in school.
Members of Enoch Burke's family staged a protest in Washington. At least 4 members of the Burkes, including his parents, stood beside a barrier on the edge of the White House compound holding up signs. Well, it wasn't quite the protest that we would hoped for, although they did go and they did draw attention to this. A lot of people were hoping that they would get access to the president.
Donald Trump was not able to do that. So it's curious to me. And as an American and a believer in democracy, I would hope that we would be able to look at all of the reasons why this happened in our country. I don't really understand how people could support a convicted felon and a man who has had so many charges against him and has the moral compass of a teenage boy. And it's heartbreaking, I think, to most of the people in America, and they're slowly waking. They're slowly waking to realize the cuts that he's making are not only going to affect the left-wing liberals that are woke.
So this guy had been out of the country for a while. He decided to come back again. When he came back, he got pinched. And note it took 13 years.
Ilamar Rodriguez Ribeiro has previous convictions for fraud in France and the UK.
Previous convictions for fraud in France and the UK, and he's running a brothel, multiple brothels in Ireland with a fake Italian passport, 800 grand in the bank over 13 years.
And Judge Patricia Ryan said today that these organised prostitution offences involved elaborate planning and considerable amounts of money, the proceeds of crime, which he laundered. She sentenced him to 10.5 years in prison, with the final year and a half suspended. Paul Reynolds, OTE News, the Dublin Circuit Criminal Court.
Ireland, it's a special place, and he's a very special guy. He did it the hard way also. He served, and then he took a little time off, and then he served again. I've heard about that. That happens on occasion. And he's
who don't simply rely on the likes of RTE to report on whatever they're told to. So again, why is anyone surprised? When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. How many times do Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have to tell us they don't give a fiddler's fuck about fixing the housing crisis before the population believes them? They are happy with housing the way it is, and they have been given a free pass to continue with the housing policies they have enacted so far. The second they were voted back in, the 75% of Fianna Fáil voters who aren't bothered by the housing completions lie tell us everything about those who voted for FFG. They have their house, and that's all that matters.
We knew each other from a long time ago, but it's a great honor to have you in the Oval Office and have you at the White House. We have tremendous business relationships with Ireland, and that will only get stronger. The relationship we have personally and every other way is very, very strong and very, very good. So I just want to...
Man who used properties across rural Ireland, jailed for 9 years. Well, my mathematics was correct. So Ilamar Rodriguez Ribeiro, age 54, arrested by the Garda Human Trafficking and Coordination Unit when he returned to Ireland from Brazil after a period of time abroad. 13 years it took to get this guy. He lived in, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, Brazil. Had been under investigation after a number of rental properties used as brothels were linked to him. I mean, like, this guy, bad enough that he was running brothels out of these places, but he was actually snapping up these rental properties all over rural Ireland, all over the place.
And set up brothels in Longford, Kildare, Cavan, Enniscorthy, Ballydoreen, Carrick-on-Shannon, Tullow and Roscommon Town.
And then sticking these trafficked women in there for men to go and satisfy themselves in there. I don't know who was using them.
You know, you mentioned housing and you mentioned other things. I mean, I have property in Ireland, as you know, and I love it. It does great.
But has now led to the conviction of a person who was intrinsically involved in an international organised crime group, trafficking women into Ireland for the purposes of sexual exploitation.
His criminality, what happens to that? I'm sure he wasn't working alone. There's no mention of anybody else being pinched in connection with this. So what happens to the victims? Are they being supported? Should they have been here legally anyway? Will they now be deported? What an absolute mess this is.
Or history that I studied, there's a lot behind my refusal, my absolute refusal to bend the knee to Israel. There's too much that I've learned about their history, about what was done to Christians, which they're alleging now is blood libel. They're convincing Jewish people, like actually Jewish people, people that practice Judaism as a faith, who are not Frankists, who are brilliant people who could research this and actually tell you what is going on. In fact, I read the books from the Israeli historians, Shlomo Sand being one of them, who has been writing about what is happening. People that have written about the Jewish mystic tradition, like the Christian mystic tradition. Again, not Christian. These people are not Jewish. In my view, they are Satanists and they have infiltrated our faiths. And we have to come together to recognize this.
Conor McGregor ended up in the Oval Office this week. What do you think that says about the state of US politics?
It's very depressing. And it seems very strange to me that the President of the United States has so many friends who are sexual abusers.
Why do you think... I think it says about the state of US politics that kind of interaction between Conor McGregor turning up and being welcomed at the White House and everything being normal. What do you think that says?
Well, I think it says that we're in trouble. It says that we're in trouble. Basically, the foundation of our country is a melting pot of people, all created equal, and that they are to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what we're promised as Americans. And to think that cruelty and lack of empathy is a value that is sprouted from the highest office in our country is overwhelmingly sad to me personally, and it felt like way too much to take.
But if you agree with the message, well, then there shouldn't be an issue. And also remember, the most important thing is that the truth can withhold scrutiny. Lies cannot withhold scrutiny. So this guy, as far as I'm concerned, was speaking a lot of truth here in this clip, and it landed him in hot water, and the backlash was huge. So in the meantime, anyway, he's deleted all his social media accounts. So I'm going to play it. You can make your own mind up, and then we'll look at some of the backlash that's happened since this clip was actually played.
Most people, seemingly to me, did understand what I was trying to get across in the video. I do think some of my points were too vague. I think they were too open to interpretation. And it's clear to me from the people that did it, enough people did.
Applying for citizenship. What made you up sticks from the States and join us?
Well, there's the President of the United States that has it out for me and has for 20 years when I told the truth about him on a program called The View, where it was my job to talk about pop culture, politics, and I mentioned his bankruptcies, and I mentioned all of the sexual assault charges, and I mentioned that he was not, in fact, the businessman that everyone thinks he is because of the show The Apprentice, where they sold a bunch of lies to America for over 10 years, and half of America believed it. And so he was very angry, to say the least.
Yes.
And he hasn't let it go, and he sort of uses me as a punchline whenever he feels the need. He's been doing it for 2 decades, and I'm still not used to it every time he does.
Last week, you're over here kind of minding your own business.
Yes.
And this happens.
Ireland is known for very happy, fun-loving people. Great attitude, many in this room right now that I've met. Why in the world would you let Rosie O'Donnell move to Ireland? I think she's going to lower your happiness level.
It's true. Thank you. I like that question. Do you know you have Rosie O'Donnell? Do you know who she is? Do you know who she is?
Yeah.
You're better off not knowing.
President Trump. Yeah, there he is in all his glory.
How does it feel?
Sitting, smiling, grinning.
In DC at the US Capitol, which you can see behind me. This is the seat of the US government, and we've had a busy week here. So many people informed, opportunities to speak to people about Enoch Burke, our son and brother, who's been imprisoned back home in Ireland for over 500 days after refusing to bow to transgenderism. And it's been great to speak to people, and the people over here are hungry. The American people are hungry for the truth, the real truth about Ireland, what's happening in Ireland, and what's been withheld from them by our leadership, our political leadership, Micheál Martin, Simon Harris, during these days.
They weren't refugees, and we declared they weren't refugees, and then they should be deported subsequently to that, but we never knew what happened. We were never told what happened to them subsequently or anything like that. there's a little bit of secrecy about the whole system that I never quite got to the bottom of.